We build bigger houses today than ever before, yet people still seem drawn to homes from the 50s and 60s. Not just architects or design enthusiasts, but regular people. These houses are still being photographed, renovated, and recreated more than 70 years after they were first built. And that made me wonder, what did these homes understand about living that we're still kind of searching for today? I don't think the answer is simply the architecture. It's easy to point to the roof lines and the carports or the large expanses of glass, but those are just visual features. What interested me was the lifestyle these homes seem to represent. Maybe a less formal way of living, a stronger connection to the outdoors, and a house organized around gathering instead of retreating. So rather than recreate a house from the 50s, I wanted to see what happened if I designed a modern home around those ideas. When I started sketching, I quickly realized that the architectural features that I normally work with, they weren't super helpful for this idea. Knowing that I wanted a low roof or a carport didn't actually tell me how the house should work. Those decisions affect the appearance of the house, but they don't really tell us anything about how the people live in it. So instead, I started looking at a much simpler question. The idea of what I call casual living. Something a little less formal, but not so wide open that it has no character either. And if casual living is really the defining idea behind these homes, what does it look like in a floor plan? That answer to that, it kept pointing me towards shared spaces. The living room became the center of the house almost immediately, because every important decision seemed to orbit around it. I wanted the kitchen to connect to it, and the dining room to also connect to it, and the backyard, it needed to feel like an extension of it. I thought a lot about the outdoors too. The porch became an important aspect of this design. Every version of the plan seemed to pull me towards a larger outdoor living area, not because I was trying to recreate anything from that particular era, but because the house felt incomplete without it. And if the living room is where people gather inside, the porch became the outdoor version of the same idea. A place to drink coffee in the morning, a place to sit after dinner, a place where absolutely nothing productive could happen, and that's okay. Another thing I found interesting while sketching is how quickly the bedrooms started competing for square footage. Every room today wants to get larger, and every closet needs to get deeper. But every square foot that goes into a private space is a square foot that can't go into a shared space. And that tension sort of shaped a lot of the decisions later. I wasn't trying to design a small house, but I also wasn't interested in creating a house where the most important spaces were the ones where people spent the least amount of conscious time in. Once the general floor plan felt right on Sketch, it's time to see whether those ideas actually work in 3D. This is usually where the real design starts because every line that I've drawn suddenly has consequences. One decision I went back and forth on involved a bedroom. I considered adding a door directly onto the porch because it would strengthen the connection between that room and the backyard. And at the same time, every door that we add removes usable wall space. And it makes furniture placement more difficult and it changes how private that porch feels. In the end, I ended up leaving it out, but I'm not really sure if that was the right decision. I don't know. What would you have done? Another area that I worked on quite a bit was the kitchen, and it created a bit of a similar dilemma. If I was designing a contemporary modern house today, the easy answer that most people turn to is just to remove the wall entirely and create one large open room. And that's what most people expect today. But I just didn't feel like that was the right move here. Connection felt important, yes, but visibility also felt important. But I also liked the idea that the kitchen could still feel like its own place. So I created just an opening between the kitchen and the living room that allows conversation and sightlines without completely dissolving the boundary between the spaces. At one point, I even considered extending the counter and creating a bar seating area. The extra seating would have been useful, but it also started eating into the living room space, and I felt like preserving that room was more important. At least that's where I landed. Would you have kept the bar seating or left it out? Let me know. So with the floor plan established, I could finally start shaping this architecture. The low roofline, deep overhangs, large windows, and carports, those are all details people tend to associate with this era. And they're certainly part of the appeal. But I don't think they're the reason these houses continue to resonate. I think the architecture helps communicate the idea, but the idea comes first. Even when I started furnishing the house, I found myself thinking less about the individual pieces of furniture and more about how people would actually use the rooms. The seating areas are arranged around conversation. The living room looks towards the backyard. The porch feels connected to the main gathering spaces. The goal wasn't to create a perfect, period-correct house. The goal was to create a house that encouraged people to spend time together. Once the architecture was complete, I started focusing on the atmosphere of the project. Because if this house was only about floor plans and roof lines, it wouldn't feel very different from any other house. A lot of the appeal of this era comes from the mood it creates. Warm wood tones, natural materials, large windows, simple forms, and colors that feel optimistic without demanding attention. The yellow front door became one of those details. It's not essential to the design, but it changes how the house feels. The same is true for the breeze block screen, the stone accents, and the relationship between the interior spaces and the backyard. Together, they create an environment that feels relaxed and approachable rather than formal. It's also worth acknowledging that many of these images we associate with this style emerged in places with incredibly forgiving weather. A covered porch is easier to enjoy when you're in Southern California than it is in a cold weather climate. But I think the larger lesson has less to do with the climate and more to do with the intention. These homes weren't just providing shelter. They were creating places where people actually wanted to spend time. So this era and these style of houses in mid-century modern are more than 70 years old now. And yet people are still building them, studying them, and drawing inspiration from them. Maybe it's the architecture, sure. Maybe it's the optimism. Maybe it's the indoor-outdoor connection. Or maybe it's just something simpler. When I look at this final design, what stands out to me isn't the roofline or the materials, it's the amount of attention given to the spaces where everyday life happens. The living room, the dining room, the porch, the backyard. The places where people naturally gather without needing a special occasion. Whether that's nostalgia, good architecture, or simply a story we've been telling ourselves for generations. I'm not entirely sure, but I can understand why the idea still resonates. So I don't know, what do you think we're actually nostalgic for? Is it the era, or is it the design? Is it the look of everything? Or is it something we can't even put our finger on? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for coming along with me on this. Remember, stay curious and design with intent.